In a fraction of a second, one of the most talented players in the world destroyed what had taken years to build. It was not a missed goal. It was not a red card. It was not a hard foul. It was a bite. A human bite, with teeth, in a World Cup match, broadcast live to more than 1 billion people. And what makes this story even more disturbing than the act itself is what came before it. Because Luis Suarez did not bite Giorgio Chiellini for the first time on that 24th of June, 2014 in Natal, Brazil. He had done it before. Twice. In professional competitions. With records, with suspensions, with public promises that it would never happen again. And it happened. For the third time. On a stage that could not have been bigger. And what that tells us about football, about human psychology, and about the limits of what extraordinary talent can conceal is a story that goes far beyond any bite. To understand Luis Suarez, you need to understand where he came from. Not geographically. Emotionally. Suarez was born in Salto, Uruguay, in 1987, the seventh of 8 children in a family facing serious financial hardship. When he was 7 years old, his parents separated. His father left. And Suarez was left with his mother and siblings in a situation that he himself described in interviews over the years as marked by scarcity and instability. He began playing football on the streets of Montevideo when the family moved to the capital, and football was, from very early on, the only thing that seemed to make sense in a world that frequently did not. He did not play with the elegance of an academy. He played with the urgency of someone who knows that this is the only path available. That urgency produced one of the most complete players of his generation. Suarez was not just a center forward. He was intelligent, skillful, relentlessly hard-working, an instinctive finisher and a teammate who elevated everyone around him. At Ajax, he revealed to Europe a quality that until then had only been known to those who followed South American football. At Liverpool, he became one of the best players in the world, year after year, season after season, with numbers that placed his name alongside the greatest. And in Uruguay, he was far more than a player. He was the symbol of a generation that had given the country back the feeling that it could compete with anyone in world football. But the story of Suarez was never only about talent. It was always about talent, and about something darker that coexisted with it in a way that even the player himself did not seem to fully understand. The first bite happened in 2010. Suarez was at Ajax and in a match against PSV Eindhoven bit the shoulder of defender Bacal during a challenge. The image circulated. The reaction was immediate. Suarez was suspended for 7 matches, made the public statements of remorse the situation required, and moved on. Most people who followed the episode treated it as an anomaly, an isolated deviation in a profile that was, in every other respect, that of an extraordinary player. The football world has a remarkable ability to compartmentalize the mistakes of its best players when those players keep scoring goals. The second bite was more serious. Not for the gesture itself, which was essentially the same, but for the context. It was April 2013. Suarez was at Liverpool, already one of the best players in the Premier League, had already been through other controversies, including an accusation of racism against Patrice Evra of Manchester United that had resulted in another lengthy suspension and an episode that had significantly damaged his reputation. And then, in a match against Chelsea, Suarez bit Branislav Ivanovic on the arm during a challenge. At Anfield itself. With cameras from every angle. With tens of thousands of people in the stands. As if the memory of what had happened with Bacal 3 years earlier simply did not exist. The suspension this time was 10 matches, the longest imposed by the English Football Association for an on-field offense up to that point. Suarez apologized publicly again, in more detail this time, with more emotion. He spoke about seeking professional help to understand why it kept happening. The football world listened, analyzed, commented, and gradually went back to talking about his goals, because the goals kept coming, wonderful, impossible, the goals of a man who saw football in a way that few players in history have managed to see it. And then came the summer of 2014, the World Cup in Brazil. Suarez returned to the continent where he had grown as a player, where football has a different texture, where the pressure is of a nature that no other tournament can replicate. Uruguay had fallen into a group with Costa Rica, England, and Italy, and expectations about the Uruguayan squad passed, as always, through one central question. How far could Suarez go when he was in form? The answer came in the second group match, against England. Suarez had missed the first match against Costa Rica through injury, arrived at the second game still not fully recovered, and was decisive anyway. He scored 2 goals. 2 goals that eliminated England from the World Cup. 2 goals that sent all of Uruguay into the streets. And 2 goals that placed Suarez back at the center of everything, as always. With that ability he had to make football look simple when for everyone else it was extraordinarily complicated. Uruguay needed a result against Italy in the third group game to guarantee qualification. The Italy of Chiellini, of Buffon, of Pirlo. The Italy that had been a finalist at the previous World Cup and that arrived in this group with the quality and experience of one of European football's greatest powers. It was a World Cup match with everything at stake on both sides. The kind of game that makes players reveal who they really are under extreme pressure. And then, in the 76th minute of the match, with the score at 0-0 and the qualification of both teams still undecided, what happened. Suarez and Chiellini were contesting a ball near the Italian area. It was one of those normal physical challenges that happen dozens of times in any World Cup match. 2 strong players fighting for position, using their bodies, using their arms, using everything a player uses in that situation within the rules and sometimes slightly beyond them. And then Suarez lowered his head and sank his teeth into Chiellini's shoulder. Chiellini reacted immediately, pulling his shirt down to show the mark. Referee Sandro Ricci did not see the incident directly. Suarez fell to the ground as if he had been struck, covering his face with his hands in an attempt to invert the narrative he had just created. And for a moment, just a moment, it seemed the gesture might go unnoticed. The referee gave no card. The game continued. And 2 minutes later Diego Godin scored the goal that put Uruguay through as group winners. But cameras do not forgive. And in a world where every centimeter of a World Cup pitch is covered by dozens of simultaneous angles, the bite was captured in high definition, in slow motion, from at least 3 different perspectives. The images reached social media before the final whistle had even blown. And what followed was one of the biggest scandals in recent football history. The reaction was global and immediate. There was no ambiguity in the images. There was no angle that showed a different interpretation. There was no context that could soften what was visible with absolute clarity. The best player in the world had bitten an opponent at a World Cup for the 3rd time in his professional career. The same gesture, the same pattern, the same inability to contain an impulse that he himself had publicly promised, twice, had been overcome. FIFA opened disciplinary proceedings with unusual speed. 2 days after the match, Luis Suarez was suspended for 9 international matches and banned from any football-related activity for 4 months. It was the most severe punishment FIFA had ever imposed on a player for an on-field offense. Uruguay were eliminated in the round of 16 without Suarez. The World Cup had ended for him in the most brutal way possible, not on the pitch, but in a FIFA hearing room in Zurich. Suarez's defense was, in itself, a spectacle. His lawyers argued that the images were inconclusive, that what appeared to be a bite could have been an accidental collision, that Chiellini had exaggerated his reaction. The Uruguayan Football Federation publicly supported the player with a vehemence that embarrassed many within the country itself. And Suarez, in the first days after the incident, stayed silent, hidden from the press, while the entire world debated what had happened with an intensity that football rarely manages to provoke off the pitch. When he finally spoke, he did so with the tears and remorse the moment required. He apologized to Chiellini. He apologized to FIFA. He apologized to football, and said, for the 3rd time in his career, that he was committed to resolving the problem that clearly existed and that clearly had not been resolved by the 2 previous occasions. Chiellini, with a generosity that surprised the world, accepted the apology publicly. He said Suarez had served his punishment and that the matter should be closed. It was the kind of response that only a man of extraordinary character can give after being bitten at a World Cup in front of 1 billion people. What the story of Suarez and Chiellini leaves us with is not just the shocking image of a gesture that should not exist in professional football. It leaves us with a far more uncomfortable question about human nature and about the limits of what talent can hide. Because Suarez was not a player without control. He was one of the most intelligent and technically refined players in the world. Someone who made brilliant decisions in fractions of a second on the pitch with a consistency that few achieve. And yet, in moments of extreme pressure, something he himself could not fully name or control took over. There are psychologists who have written about the Suarez case as a study in impulsive behavior under extreme stress. There are journalists who used it as an example of the paradox of high-performance football, where the same intensity that produces the greatest goals can also produce the greatest mistakes. There are Uruguayan fans who preferred never to speak of the bites and to remember only the goals, which were many and which were extraordinary. And there is Giorgio Chiellini, who carried the mark of Suarez's teeth on his shoulder for a few days and who then, with an elegance that time confirmed, chose to let it go. Football moved on. Suarez went to Barcelona after that World Cup, where, alongside Messi and Neymar, he formed one of the most frightening attacking trios that modern football has ever produced. He won titles. He scored goals that will live forever in the memory of the sport. And the bites remained as a disturbing footnote in a career that, in almost every other respect, was extraordinary. But that image, that fraction of a second in Natal, with Chiellini pulling down his shirt and Suarez hiding his face in his hands, that image does not go away. Because it represents something that football rarely openly admits, that the greatest talents in the sport are complex human beings, with complex histories, with impulses that no sponsorship contract and no public relations session can completely tame. And that football, being the most powerful mirror of humanity that sport has ever created, reflects not only what is most beautiful in human beings, but also what is most inexplicable. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments what you think of this story. This is the kind of episode that divides opinions like few others in football. There are people who never forgave Suarez and people who completely separate the player from the gesture. Tell me also which city and country you are watching from, because this channel receives people from every corner of the world and I am genuinely curious. Hit the like button before you go, because it helps the channel keep growing. And if you are not yet subscribed, subscribe now, because there is a lot more great content on the way. Oh, and before I close, while researching this story I came across something very special connected to the world of classic football and World Cup nostalgia that you will want to discover. I will not reveal it here, but the link is in the first pinned comment below the video. Well worth checking out, no strings attached. And hold on to this before you go, what you just watched is only one more chapter of a story that never ends. Football is full of moments like this one, of stories that seem impossible to believe but that actually happened. And they are coming soon, right here, on this channel. You will not want to miss them.